Well, it's that time again when you can tune into Kochies Business Builders with one click on your computer, your laptop, your iPad or your smartphone. Now, so many small businesses dread the day when big businesses with their deep corporate pockets move into town. Of course, it's almost impossible to compete head-to-head with the big guys on price and resources, but it really doesn't have to spell the end. Our sales expert Ciaran McGuigan joins Alex Brophy to talk about the strategy small businesses can adopt to help them differentiate themselves and not just survive but thrive in the marketplace.
Thanks for joining us, Ciaran. So what strategies can small businesses put in place to compete against big business when it comes to town?
You know, one of the things I think a lot of businesses don't actually realise, and this is true for big businesses as well as small businesses, is that one of their points of difference is them. You know, they're the point of difference. The conversations that they have, they're part of the brand, and this is particularly true for small businesses. You know, that's the face that the customer sees, talks to, etc. And there's a value to that a lot of customers don't get when they shop in a larger store. So it's a lot more difficult for the big businesses, particularly in retail, to get the service levels right for that customer. And it's a lot easier, particularly from a competitive point of view, for the person behind the smaller or more local shop to get it right and to really engage with the person. Now that means that the product or the service that's being offered is as much about the conversation we're having as it is about the widget that's being handed across a desk. If there were three things I would say that all businesses, big and small, need to relate to, and it's the three key things that are absolutely rock solid and can get diluted as businesses get bigger, is the idea. What is the product or the concept that's being offered to the marketplace? And where's the value in that for the customer? The next thing is the list. Do you have a list? You need, because everything at the end of the day boils down to a list. And it's either going to be a list of customers you already have or customers you'd like to have. And there's nothing wrong with having a big whiteboard and drawing, and if you like, a picture of all the attributes of what your ideal customer is like. And then subsequently go out and find them. Because once you decide that they're this particular, and I'm talking about geographic and demographic criteria. So age, sex, location, background, experience, needs and wants, and building that concept in your mind of who they are and what they are, and then creating a list based from available resources. Because you'll only, if you're a small business, you can only cover pretty much a localized area if you've got a larger product or service that needs to be moved. And then the final thing, so you've got the idea of the concept that's being offered, the list, okay, and then the final thing is the channel of communication. You know, either the telephone or the local newspaper or face-to-face. Those three things need to be managed and leveraged at every level, in big businesses and small businesses, and understood. So a lot of people in business spend time in it rather than managing the business, if that makes sense.
And what about specific approaches for retailers versus B2B businesses?
Okay, I think that there's a couple of things that retailers don't do and need to get better at. And one is they need to start working more on the numbers side of things. That means counting how many customers are walking through the door, literally. So if I was speaking to a retailer, I want to know how many customers come in on a Tuesday as opposed to a Thursday. How many of them are walking out with a product under their arm or have purchased? How many of them are just looking? What strategies do you have in place to retain them or keep them in the shop or gather information about who they are and where they do? Most people would be familiar with being at the checkout and the service or till operator asks them what suburb you're in. Now, I think that's a basic piece of information that everybody should gather in a retail environment, but perhaps you can do a little bit more. You know, one of the things that we can all do is ask for people's names. Everyone loves having their name spoken out loud. So as when someone walks in and you say, "Oh, hi, John," even if it's been a couple of months, and it's a hard skill to master is to remember people's names. But by doing so and becoming more familiar, people will choose to come into your store. And that's the key thing in retail. They have to choose to come in.
And what sort of things can you do to ingratiate yourself to the local community?
Okay, I think it's absolutely key that you offer value. I think that's true for any business. But if you're in a community, the first community that you've got are the people that work for you in your shop. Okay, so you can't profess to be running or adding value to the community if the people that are working for you aren't enjoying their work. So you've got to make that not necessarily the most fun environment in the world, but you've got to make people enjoy coming to work and working with you. And that will reflect back on the customers when they're coming in. The next thing, you've got to decide in terms of strategic environment that you want to be in. Now, a lot of small businesses will get involved in sponsorship events, whether it's Surf Life Saving, the local golf club, the RSL, whatever it may be, based primarily on their own personal interests as opposed to the objective interests of the business. But there's a wealth of other people within the business who've got other interests and can open up other ways of building links into the community. Now, again, that has to be evaluated because you could spread yourself very, very thinly and being busy in the community without actually generating the purpose of that activity, which is to generate, if you like, goodwill or traffic into the retail environment.
And looking across to B2B businesses, is it a similar personalised approach that's going to win out there?
Well, in B2B, you sort of move through the looking glass a little bit and into a slightly different world. And what I mean by that is that in a B2B or business-to-business environment, you're selling into a much more of a rational decision-making environment. You're also selling products and services, so it's less emotional. Okay, so people are making decisions based on logic as opposed to emotion, initially. At the end of the day, people always buy from who they want to buy, but they'll often disguise it or present it as a rational decision. The next thing is that often decisions, particularly depending on the price or how your product or service is offered to that organization, the decisions will be made by a group or a panel of people. So you need to influence several people as opposed to one customer. And that requires a certain degree of strategy or approach. And I would go back to this idea of having a list. Find 10 or 12 businesses, and often most businesses that sell into what I call a B2B environment haven't actually just drawn up a list of the businesses in their own building. I mean, that should be the first point of call. It's like, who are the other businesses in my building, and do I know them? So, meet them, get to speak to them. Let them know that you're there and that you can choose, or they can choose rather, to do business with you if they've got a need. And people will work that way. But it requires a much more of a rational or unemotional strategy as opposed to a more customer-centric or people-centric strategy on the retail side.
Some great insights there, Ciaran. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.